Why would a psychiatrist who treats mental health disease talk to you about the life of King Solomon? Well, King Solomon teaches us how to live a good life and a life away from evil. So living a good life will help one to manage stress better, and this will lead to better mental and physical well-being. King Solomon assures us that staying close to God will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones. So scientifically, we know that eating healthy, getting regular exercise, sleeping well, those are all going to help both your physical and mental health. But a little bit more subtle is this notion that living wisely is going to help with mental health. That being surrounded by a good environment, by good people, by staying away from dishonest and evil and bad things, and sticking to what's good, what's kind, what's helpful for others and oneself. So King Solomon's life is great to learn from because one, we can see from his strengths what he's accomplished, and we can also see from his weaknesses when he did not live a wise life. So 950 years before Christ, King Solomon was the king of Israel, and he was known as the wisest person, one of the wealthiest persons in his generation, even ever. Royalty from faraway places would come to visit King Solomon to hear about his wisdom. During his reign, he dedicated 7 years to build the temple of God, which was an amazing structure that was intricately planned with imported parts from other regions of the world, such as trees from Lebanon. King Solomon also expanded the nation of Israel to a larger territory, and he was very knowledgeable about nature and the world around him. King Solomon himself lived in a large palace with many servants, and so his palace was so large that it would consume 6,900 liters of flour each day, along with 2,300 liters of meal, 30 oxen, 100 sheep, and also deer, gazelles, and other animals. There are also 40,000 stalls for his horses and 12,000 horsemen. King Solomon had governors that would dedicate their lives to preparing food and substance for King Solomon and his palace. So King Solomon was really wise. He's even described as wiser than all the land of Egypt. And Egypt at this time was a very ancient, advanced civilization. And so even Pharaoh, which is the king of Egypt, gave his daughter to King Solomon as a wife to have, maybe at a form of respect or admiration or to form a political alliance. So Solomon's wisdom and life experience is talked in the book of Kings. It's also mentioned in his writings in the book of Proverbs, book of Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Songs. One of the definitions of wisdom, which comes from like the Hebrew term, is to listen or hear, such as to listen to hear to the right guidance, advice, or counsel. And the dictionary definition of wisdom is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment, which, as one can imagine, would likely result from the right guidance or counsel. And this condition of acting oneself in the right judgment, or how one's judgment is actually a quality that psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health providers will evaluate in each clinical encounter. It's a routine part of the history because it's important to assess because it helps to gauge if one can anticipate the consequences of their actions down the road. For example, if one drinks 10 beers and then drive, they're at risk of injuring themselves, others are getting a DUI. Someone who's driving drunk is not going to have good judgment, is going to be at more risk to have some of those problems that come up. If somebody is married to their spouse and continues to put them down over and over and over again, that may put a strain on the relationship. So if you put down somebody, you should be aware that maybe that's going to push them away or going to cause problems down the road. If one does not follow the directions of their boss or their employer, they may get fired or it might cause problems for the business. Just to clarify, sometimes people with a mental disease do not have good judgment because their disease impacts their thinking, their decision making, etc. However, with proper treatment of the disease, their mental status and their thinking can get better to where they have better and good judgment. On the other hand, sometimes people act or judge poorly or have poor judgment, such as using drugs, alcohol, doing things they're not supposed to be doing, and that in turn can cause mental disease. So it's important to try and cultivate what this wisdom is. And according to Christian belief, wisdom is essentially the person of Jesus Christ. It's having a relationship with Christ. So in order to have the best mental health possible, one needs to have a close relationship with Christ. And that's going to help them mentally, physically, psychologically, spiritually. It's going to help in all aspects of life. Through the power of God, that one can be guided, protected, and fully nourished. So I hear testimonies from patients who were struggling with addiction and sober, that they believe that God is the one who got them through the addiction or their problems. And that's one of the most crucial aspects of the 12 steps programs that's often helps people to get sober from their addictions or alcohol use. Now, King Solomon in the book of Proverbs has many words of wisdom in there. Generally speaking, he talks about ways to live a good life and to be sure to stay away from evil practices. And he really encourages for someone to prioritize a relationship with God above all else. He suggests to be very diligent in pursuing the relationship with God in the person of Jesus Christ, and to seek that wisdom that comes from God more than money, more than fame, more than power, more than authority, more than any of the other stuff in life that people can get tempted or persuaded by. He goes further, says that people who act evilly will not be profitable for themselves nor other people, but people who act righteously, they will profit a lot from that. King Solomon describes times in his own personal life in which he desired to live pleasurably, went through whatever his heart desired, whether it was money, whether it was wine, whether it was eating a lot, and he didn't find any fulfillment or nourishment in that stuff. It didn't cause him to be happy. But what he found was that he was fully happy and satisfied when he pursued that relationship with God and was nourished by that relationship with God. Not only does that fulfill somebody, but it also is going to help them with their relationships with other people. It's going to spill over to help others as well. And King Solomon also promises that trusting in God will help someone persevere during the difficult times in their life. So King Solomon gives many practical ways how to live a wise life. He says to seek the wise life, which is better than the profits of silver, more precious than rubies, and all the things you desire cannot compare with her. He promises it brings a long life, it will bring wealth, it will bring honor. He educates that it's through living wisely will one get a high position and be able to effectively rule and judge others. Some other characteristics King Solomon says to live by is to don't speak bad about others, do not speak wrongly, do not conspire against others. He also instructs to not be lazy, but to work diligently. And he gives an example of ants who have no one to oversee them or no one to rule over them, but they continuously work for themselves. He advises that people may flatter but have evil intent. If one does act in an evil way, their work, their labors, their efforts will actually be going to somebody else. So evil may bring trouble for a time, but he encourages people to not be afraid, trust in God, because God will protect those who are doing good. Many times in the book of Proverbs, King Solomon gives a special warning to young men to stay away from attractive or beautiful women that try to seduce them. And he says it's only going to cause them harm and damage their reputation. Also, if they are married, cause a lot of ill feelings in their spouse, and it's not going to be good for that person. He likens it to someone that's touching fire or a hot coal. It's going to hurt, it's going to leave a burn. So a lot of these he's likely referring to his own life. King Solomon says that respecting one's parents will help them to sleep peaceably. And in his own life, he respected his father David through continuing his legacy by building the temple. He also followed David's suggestions when it comes to dealing with certain people, how they dealt with David. So it's important to listen to parents' advice unless it's disobeying God's commandments one way or another. Then God's commandments will take priority. But King Solomon, he was not perfect. He actually drifted away from God when he became close to people that did not have the same faith. So one of the mistakes he made was in fact marrying Pharaoh's daughter, because that took him away from the God that he knew and worshiped to more worship Pharaoh's daughter's God. It's really a practical example that the people that we have in our life can really influence how we think, how we behave, how we act, how we even feel emotionally, and to really kind of be wise or be cautious about those people that we have in our life. I mean, you can see this in so many examples. You can see this in gang members. You can see this in religious communities. You can see this in work environments. Solomon has many other words of wisdom in his writings, but one of my favorites, and that refers to mental health, is anxiety in the heart of man causes depression, but a good word makes it glad. It seems that living a good, honest, right life, surrounding oneself with good people and people that give good advice and people that are holy. It just helps one to think about others and deal with others in a healthy, fruitful, more loving way. It helps one to persevere through the challenges that may lie ahead, and it's going to be better for not only their mental health but also their physical health as well. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you liked what you saw.